Hello, hello, hello. My name is Jill Osborne. I am the president and founder of the Interstitial Cystitis Network. It is Sunday, October 6th, the first Sunday of the month, and it is time for a regularly scheduled interstitial cystitis, bladder, and pelvic pain support group meeting. If you've got urinary frequency, urgency, pressure, pain, if you've been diagnosed with IC or you don't know what the hell is wrong with you, this is the place for you because my job is to try to educate you, give you really good knowledge, support, encouragement so that you can work more effectively with your doctor. Oh, hold on. I'm doing it on the wrong way. Guys, hold on one sec. Hello, YouTube. Give me a moment here. I got to fix something because I started doing it on the wrong Facebook page, which I have been known to do before. Give me a quick moment. All right. All right, baby. Here we go. Live. I see. And pelvic pain support group meeting. Hope you guys are having a good weekend. As you can tell, let's see. Live. I see. And pelvic pain. One more thing. Can you hear me typing like mad? Thankfully, I'm a really fast typer. All right. Yes. Hello, hello, hello. My name is Jill Osborne. I am the president and founder of the Interstitial Cystitis Network. We are doing our intro for the second time. Hello, YouTube. YouTube, you've been on for a little bit. Facebook, unfortunately, had a little glitch when I was trying to set you up. So we have now just set up Facebook correctly. Hello, Lisa. Hi, Donna. Hi, Pat. Nice to see you, my friends, my friends, my friends. Now, of course, it is Sunday, October 6th. That means that this is our first of two scheduled support group meetings here on the internet. I do them the first and third Sunday, 12:30 Pacific time, 3:30 Eastern Standard Time. Known to give 5 or 10 minutes either way as we're setting up software. Yes, indeedy. Yes, indeedy. So I have a lot of news to go over today, but before we do that, I want to introduce myself. So for those of you who are newbies, I'm the longest serving IC support group leader in the United States. I've been a support group leader for 26 years this month. Like, holy hell, how did that happen? 26 years ago this month, my first support group meeting at Petaluma Valley Hospital. I was very, very blessed that our support group was sponsored um, by Kaiser Permanente, which is really rare. Kaiser Permanente normally doesn't sponsor outside support groups, but my urologist was the bomb at the time, Mark Klein, and he got us in all sorts of places. So we held our first support group meetings at Petaluma Valley Hospital for a couple of years. And then we transitioned up to Kaiser Permanente up here in Northern California. Anyway, so how did the IC network start? Like, what the hell is the IC network here? Well, the IC network was my doctoral dissertation proposal. So when I started my first support group the first year, what was so interesting was the patients who really needed the support couldn't come to the meetings. I would work my butt off trying to put together these 3-hour meetings, lots of handouts, really good educational information, stuff like that. And, out of 300 people in my support group, I'd get 30 or 40 people at a meeting. And I knew that there were people who really needed the info. So I'd call them and go, "Why didn't you come?" And they said, "Jill, it just hurt too much to get in the car." And I'll tell you a secret. I had to drive 30 minutes on a freeway to get to Petaluma Valley Hospital. I cried in the car going to the meetings I was running. So I totally got that. So what struck me is, how could I bring support to patients who were homebound? What could we do to get into that patient's home to give them the comfort that they deserved? And that's when America Online was getting started. So started the first bladder urology support groups on America Online on CompuServe, although very little on CompuServe. America Online was the bomb. So worked with paraplegics, quadriplegics, prostatitis patients, bladder cancer patients, IC patients, cancer patients, you name it. I worked with them for a year, all on my own buck, just trying to gather data. And then I found a dissertation at Stanford University and said, hey, I could use that to create an online support center. And that's exactly how the IC network was born back in, the support group started in 1993. The IC network was born in 1994. When I started the IC network, I had a vision here. My vision was I wanted a third of my work to go for supporting patients. I wanted a third of my work to go to supporting researchers. And I wanted a third of my work in our daily time to go supporting clinicians. Because the reality is that working with IC patients, especially back then, was so hard for doctors because there was no information. There's so little information. And so whenever I talked with urologists, I said, what can I do to make your job easier? What can I do to help you working with patients, et cetera, et cetera? And that's really the genesis of the website. Lots of content, lots of good information where you can go over on icnetwork.org and read lots of good information on IC. Our website is rated the best website on IC in the world by Harvard Medical School and the University of London. And I'm really, really proud of that 25, 26 years, 25 years later, we are still the top website on IC because I work my butt off on it every single day. It is my life's work and I love every minute of it. Now, the purpose of these meetings is to make you so strong, so knowledgeable, so informed that no one can ever mess with you again. I don't want anybody to be able to say to you that you're damaged goods. I don't want, like I had a doctor say to me, I don't want anybody to say to you that this is incurable. I don't want anybody to tell you that IC is in fact an incurable bladder disease, because we now know that that is simply not the truth. We now know that there are variants or subtypes of IC. As an example, if you were to spend any time in a support group at a support group meeting, you would very quickly see the diversity in this patient population. Some patients have bladders covered with bloody ulcers. Others have completely normal bladders, both diagnosed with IC. Yet, are they the same? Absolutely not. Some patients have terrible agonizing pain. Others only have frequency urgency, both diagnosed with IC. Are they the same? Absolutely not, not necessarily. And when you ask patients when their symptoms began, that's when you really see the diversity, because for some people, IC begins in childhood, like 5 years, 6 years old. For others, IC begins after menopause. Are they the same? Hell no. For some people, IC begins after chemotherapy, while for others, IC begins after a traumatic injury. Are they the same? Absolutely not. And so, what the research community and what clinicians had to acknowledge, 15 years ago, is that a one treatment fits all approach does not work. Elmeron does not work for everyone. In fact, Elmeron barely works for people. That it is barely above placebo in research studies. It certainly has helped some people, there's no doubt about it, but it's certainly not a cure all for everybody. So, what researchers and doctors have been doing now for the last decade is something called phenotyping or subtyping. We're trying to understand the unique variants of IC so that you get the most effective treatment for your specific case of IC. Ooh, let me turn my light on. Whoops, forgot to turn my light on. That might help. All right, I'm also wearing my SI belt right now. If you saw that big white belt around my waist. I don't know, man. I went to bed last night and I rolled the wrong way and my SI joint started screaming and I laid in bed for an hour and I almost got up and just gave up on sleeping, but I threw the SI belt on. So anyway, okay. So what researchers have been doing now is they're trying to understand your unique presentation of IC. We don't want you to do Elmeron if you have a pelvic floor injury. It doesn't make any sense. However, we might want you to do Almiron or another bladder coating if, for example, you have the genitourinary syndrome of menopause or you've got chemo-induced cystitis. And so the intentions now really around the world, and I just sent last night at 1 in the morning, I sent a Q&A to a physician who's going to be in our next magazine. And I asked her, how is she using the subtypes? Because she's definitely using the subtypes. It's really revolutionizing patient care. It's helping you understand that every patient is unique. And this is where your search on social networking and on the internet gets really, really challenging because you're going to read stories from other patients. Some patients getting better, some patients getting worse. But the sad reality is that their experience is not going to be your experience and vice versa. Everybody's slightly different. We call it the snowflake principle. Everybody's a snowflake. So you are an anatomical mystery to be solved. We have to understand what in your pelvis is driving your symptoms. It could be, as an example, um, a bladder injury, like if you've gone through chemotherapy. The bladder, like any other part of the body, can be hurt. What normally hurts the bladder is chemicals. And so, if you've had some sort of caustic chemical exposure, like chemotherapy, or if you're a big Mountain Dew drinker or diet soda drinker, we know that, especially for those patients who don't drink water, like you grew up just drinking soda, you got to understand that the human body was not designed, the bladder was not designed for that massive daily acid load. And eventually, that acid is going to start damaging tissue. Okay. Or you may indeed have some sort of muscle trauma. Who knew that the pelvic floor muscles could cause all the symptoms we associate with the bladder frequency, urgency, pressure, pain? But they do. But there are some subtle differences. So, if you've got a bladder wall injury or something going on with your bladder wall, like menopause or even chronic infection, you're going to have pain as your bladder fills with urine that is relieved by urination. So your day is literally controlled by the volume of fluid in your bladder. The fuller you are, the worse you feel. And as soon as you pee, there's a profound sense of thank God. Thank God I found a bladder, right? A bathroom. But some of you watching this right now, you don't have pain before you pee, you have pain after you pee. That's very different because that points us instead to your potentially to your muscles. You could, number one, be having a bladder spasm, but a bladder spasm happens literally as the last couple drops of urine are coming out of your bladder. And if you're just peeing, yeah, 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 yeah. And then as the last couple of drops coming out, you get this God, how the hell do you even describe it? It is so awful. For me, it immediately forced me to bend over, and it's like this muscle spasm shot up my back and down my legs, and I had to sit there on the toilet for like 5 minutes until the spasm calmed down. Right. So bladder spasms can happen, although actually they're kind of rare. They're really a sign that your bladder wall is really, really badly damaged. Far more likely, you could be having a pelvic floor spasm. And it's a different muscle. It's a different type of muscle, skeletal muscle. Your bladder is composed of smooth muscle, so skeletal muscle. So somebody with pelvic floor issues, you're going to have frequency, urgency, pressure, pain, but you're not going to be as controlled by volume. Your pain is going to be steadier. You're not going to have really extreme highs and lows. Like bladder wall pain is described like razor blades and ground glass. Whereas pelvic floor pain is steadier, it's duller, It has a burning quality to it because a muscle that's working hard is a muscle that builds up lactic acid. You might feel a downward sensation, like something's falling out of you, an upward sensation, like somebody's pushing something up inside of you. I will tell you, for me, my pelvic floor, I feel it if I sit down suddenly sometimes. Um, when my levator muscles are spasming, it's like there's a fist up my vagina that's grabbing onto tissue and pulling downwards. It's so creepy. I hate it. I hate it. But that actually is a muscle spasm. Um, and the classic symptom of somebody with tight pelvic floor muscles, dysfunctional pelvic floor muscles, is you cannot start your urine stream right away. Whether you're standing in front of the toilet, or you're squatting over the toilet, or you're sitting on the toilet, you cannot release your urine right away. You wait 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 seconds, maybe even longer before you can relax enough to let urine out. Classic sign of the pelvic floor. Of course, we're also going to look at nerve function and nerve dysfunction because nerves can play a role in bladder symptoms and pelvic pain. And so, if your symptoms are very positional, if you're fine when you stand, but when you sit down, it hurts. When you bend over, it hurts. If you have sciatica pain that's shooting down your leg, that tells us. Or if you have PGAD, persistent genital arousal disorder, where you feel kind of aroused, but it hurts. Or you might feel pins and needles like along your vulva if you're a woman, but anywhere in there. That usually means that we've got a compressed nerve of some type. And usually the cause goes back to super, super tight pelvic floor muscles. And then, of course, we certainly have genetics. Genetics play a role in my case. Hello, redhead from Norway, as I've said many, many times. Every woman in my family, going back 3 generations, we have all of the symptoms of central sensitization. We've got incredibly sensitive skin. We're food sensitive. We're drug sensitive. We have a sensitive stomach. We have a sensitive gut. We have a sensitive bladder. We have sensitive everything. Like, holy hell, everything. Like, really? Really? Do I have to be? I didn't feel my sensitivities until I was in my early 20s. When I was a kid, I could eat chocolate, I could eat oatmeal, I could do all sorts of stuff. Then all of a sudden, at the age of age of 22, like the shit hit the fan. Excuse me for saying that, but it's true. It's just like, okay, it's just this cascade of things that ultimately, in the end, all came back to incredibly sensitive nerves. And what was so important about that, let me just say this. So I had vulvodynia in high school. I had polycystic ovarian syndrome in college. I had irritable bowel in my first federal job after I left college. I had and that was wicked. It took years to figure that out. Then I had migraines. And it was like every couple of months something new would happen. And it wore me down. It's like, What?" And while so many of my friends were out getting married and having babies, I was at home laying in my bed in the fetal position with spasms for years, for freaking years, like from the age of 23 to 26 or 27. It's brutal. And it was my sister who gave me a book on allergies and sensitivities. I didn't really understand a sensitivity, and that there are some things, especially for those of us who are sensitive, there are some foods and environmental irritants that they don't trigger an allergic response, a histamine response, but they do trigger a different type of response in the body, which is really, really uncomfortable. But I mean, I got to be really honest with you guys. I was profoundly depressed. I did not know what the hell was wrong with my body. All I knew is that I was missing out on life. I don't even know how the hell I got through grad school. I mean, really, honestly. I mean, I can remember being in meetings with cramping. Ironically, I wasn't having bladder stuff back then. I was just having other stuff, most specifically IBS stuff. And I really thought that I was being punished. I really thought that there was something fundamentally wrong with me as a person. I might not have been able to verbalize it, but on the inside, I was a worthless human being. That is exactly how I felt. I felt completely and totally worthless. And then my sister gave me this book that talked a little bit about sensitivity. So it's like, oh, interesting. Wait a second. And I followed some of the suggestions in the book. And one thing I knew is that I was always sick over the holidays, terribly ill over the holidays. And it said, "Oh, did you know people can be allergic to be sensitive to pine trees?" Holy hell! I was sensitive to the freaking pine tree. I couldn't believe it. Took the pine tree out of the house. Oh, felt so much better, which is why I don't have pine in my house anymore. I learned also one of the things that book said is that there can be a lot of grain sensitivities, as we know now with people with gluten intolerance, but this was 25 years ago or 30 years ago. And so it said, stop all of your grains and then introduce them one at a time. So I stopped all of my grains, literally except for rice. And within 24 hours, my IBS disappeared. The cramping all stopped. It's like, what? Oh. So the question was trying to figure out which grain it was. And it turned out it was oatmeal. That I am incredibly sensitive to oatmeal. And I trace that back to ancestry because they didn't have oatmeal in northern Norway, where my family comes from. So my body, I think, just doesn't know how to process it. Um, and so I say this to you because I don't want you to do what I did, which was spend years thinking that you're a bad person or spending years thinking that you're not worthy or unlovable or anything like that. You are an anatomical mystery to be solved, but that says nothing about your self-worth. It says nothing about your self-worth. You are a good person. You are a good person who's been hurt. You're no different than someone who's hit by a car, right? And you deserve all the love and support that you would give to that person in your family who was hit by a car. You deserve that same love and support in return. But there are moments when, getting a little bit of extra help is reasonable. Absolutely reasonable. And I think the thing that profoundly changed my life was a doctor who told me that I would forever be a burden on my family. And that's what woke me up, and I went, "Wait a second. No, 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 no. I got 3 college degrees. I have an award from the White House. I will prove you wrong, you son of a bitch. How dare you say that to me?" And that was right before I started my first support group rather. And you have to choose to fight, and I want you to choose to fight. I want you to fight. I don't want you to be a passive patient. I want you to be an active patient. I want you to kick some butt. Kick some butt. I don't want you to accept anybody minimizing you. I don't want anybody saying that there's no hope. I want you to fight like you've never fought before. I listen to a lot of music. I love lots and lots of different music. And Adam Lambert, you guys know Adam Lambert, who was on American Idol, and he sings with Queen now. His voice is stunning. Is amazing, and he has a new song, and the first lyric for the song is, "There's something missing, and I'm pissed, and I've got something to say." Uh, and then the second one is, "All of the witches and the demons better get out of my way." Oh yeah. And then it's, "I pick myself up when I fall." I want you to pick yourself up, and you can be angry when you pick it up. I don't want you to take your anger out at anybody else, though. You know what? Listen, if you have every right to be pissed off. You have every single right to be angry at the way you're treated, at what you're facing, if you're not responding to therapy, if you can't find a doctor. I don't want you to take it out at other people. I want you instead to write it out in a journal. You got to get it out of your body. You cannot just sit there and spin in a circle of anger because you're going to strike out at anybody and everybody in your life. And frankly, you need them in your life. You have to find a really good constructive way to get these emotions out while you are dealing with trying to figure out what's going on with your pelvis. So I really recommend journaling. I love journaling. Whenever I'm in a situation where things are really, really dark inside my head, or I'm really stressed out about something, it's just like I whip out the journal, 3 pages longhand in the morning before you get out of bed, like it's right next to your bed. Write out all of your worries and fears so that you can just get them out so they don't weigh you down during the day. And at the end of the day, same thing, write down 3 pages longhand, any accumulated stresses, worries, get them out so you can sleep well. Find a way to do that. So, anyway, you are wonderful. You are kind. You are generous. You are giving. You are worthy. You are deserving. And together, we're going to try to get you out of this situation or at least get you feeling better. Can I hear a hell yeah, baby? Hell yeah. We are stronger together. Now, I am simulcasting right now on Facebook and YouTube. If I'm looking up here, I'm looking at Facebook. If I'm looking down here, I'm looking at YouTube. I am not using the streaming software because clearly it's quite glitchy. I do have some announcements to make, though. Announcement number one is that we now have two separate um, legal teams working on class actions about Elmoron. Lawsuits have not been filed yet. However, they are now advertising for patients. And I've been working or talking with one company, and now another company has come in. And so when that data I should have more information for you in a month. For those of you who have experienced any eye issues with Elmeron that you think are related to pigmentary maculopathy, um, there is a future for you. Okay, with respect to potential legal action against a company. I think it's really kind of disgraceful that Janssen Pharmaceuticals has yet to issue a public statement on this. And this is one of those situations where, I mean, like, seriously, we've got to fight. We got to fight. I mean, they want you to be, they want you to be, they want to wear it. I mean, hey, man, guys, you got to understand a lawsuit isn't necessarily about the truth. A lawsuit is about who has the wherewithal to survive the longest and who has the most money. So they might have the money, but we got the power, we got the manpower. And so I will try to give more information when that happens. I never took Elmeron. I cannot participate in this. There was just something about Elmeron from day one that didn't quite resonate with me. So I never took Elmeron. But for those of you who have, if you're having issues, let me know. Can we do a sound check? How are you guys doing with the sound? The sound okay? Wendy says, I just went and had a colonoscopy, and for some reason, both times I have done this, I have ended up in an instant flare. Is there something in the prep that causes this? Wendy, I actually just issued a blog on colonoscopy preps earlier this summer over on our website where we talk about the pros and cons. So yes, there is a chance that some preps, especially if they contain citric acid, might have irritated your bladder, but it's far more likely that it's actually gas. When they do a colonoscopy, they insert gas in your bowel so that they can look at it more easily, and that gas can cause cramping. And so it's more likely that you're having gas cramping. Amy says, Jill, I'm wondering about taking Flagyl so much. Bacterial vaginosis is back with me. I went through a pregnancy, miscarriage, and my body is totally in a flare. Oh, hun, I'm so sorry. If I could give you a hug right now, I would. I'm so sorry. What you want to do is you want to make sure you have your doctor do something called antibiotic sensitivity testing to see if they can find another antibiotic that it perhaps is not quite as risky for you. Flagyl is a very rough antibiotic. It's been associated now with ruptured tendons, aortic aneurysms, all sorts of stuff like that. And I think I did a blog on that last spring. So Flagyl is not normally meant for simple infections anymore. It's only meant to be used if something else is not available. If you've got something that will only respond to Flagyl. So it goes back to those testings. Lisa on YouTube says she had a colonoscopy in July. The prep was Plenview, P as in Paul, L-E-N, V as in Victor, U. She says it's the best prep I've ever had. You know what, Lisa, would you please remind me to add that to our website? I need to add that to the article. Melody says she's in a flare right now. Oh, girl, I'm so sorry. Aaron says, stopped Elmeron 3 weeks ago and haven't noticed any change in how I feel. Guess what? Because I'm not the subtype that it would help. Girl, exactly. You know, I once worked with a lady, I kid you not. She put, now this was an older lady in the Midwest. She spent her entire retirement fund on Elmeron. $50,000 she had saved. And I asked her, I said, did it help you? And she went, no. And I went, why did you keep taking it? And she said, because there was nothing else. I mean, the good news here is we've got a lot more we can do. We have a lot more things that we can do. Ryan says, you just started taking Elmeron. You're trying to decide if the risks are worth it. So Ryan, if you look at the American Urology Association guidelines for IC, it's a 6-step treatment protocol. And the steps are arranged with respect to the risk of adverse event. So step 1 is the easy stuff. Step 6 is the permanent life-changing stuff. Elmeron is in step 2. And it will, I think I asked and suggested that it be moved to step 3 or step 4 because of the eye issue. But what's in step 1? In step 1 are supplements. And so the American Urology Association basically says to patients like you, try the supplements first because the supplements don't have the same risks as the traditional medications. And so now, of course, the AUA does not endorse any brands. They specifically mentioned calcium glycerophosphate, also known as Preleaf, right? But Preleaf doesn't do anything for your bladder wall. Preleaf just reduces acid level. The things that could potentially help your bladder wall are going to be bladder builder, bladder rest, desert harvest aloe, or cysto renew, which are up on the shelf behind me, and I can get them down and show them to you a little bit later. And guys, let me just take a moment here. We have to definitely thank Preleaf because they're the ones who sponsor this support group meeting. They have been very involved with IC now for 25, 30 years. Incredibly grateful for their support of IC conferences, patient events, websites, you name it, they care. And they're in fact, my dad, 96-year-old dad, is now taking Preleaf because he's got a twitchy bladder himself. The 96-year-old bladders suck. All right. Melody says you're on Elmeron 3 times a day. So Melody, you know, if you don't know, here, hold on a sec. Oh my God. Like, I so hurt my back last night. Okay. We'll try this. I'm going to be moving around a lot. So Melody, it was a year ago that researchers at the Emory Eye Center at Emory University, they're the ones who sent a letter to the editor of the Journal of Urology, sharing that they believe that they had found a brand new eye disease that they believe was associated with the use of Elmeron, also known as pentosan polysulfate. And we now have 4 or 5 separate papers and studies that have been released and presented this year. This was their original article that appeared a year ago last spring. And what they found is that, let's see if I can get a, now I'll show you 2 sets of pictures. What they found in a group of so basically they had a bunch of IC patients referred to their clinic. And some of them had difficulty going from light to dark or from dark to light. Some of them had areas of blindness or blind spots, or they had difficulty reading. And so they ruled out all the genetic causes, all the other potential causes, and they just couldn't figure it out. until they started asking about medication use. And what they found was that these patients were using Pentosyn, and most of them had been using it for a long time. So they then theorized that the Pentosyn was actually in some way, or a toxic metabolite of the Pentosyn was building up on the retina. And I can show you some pictures here. So these are time lapse. So let's look at this middle one. This was at the first appointment. This was later on, and you can see that this damage is now diffuse in a large area. Same here, small area, bigger, bigger, small area, bigger, much bigger. And this is another set of pictures. I think that this picture is probably the best. So look at small spots, uh, bigger spots, and then a lot of bigger spots. You can see that up here too, and you can see that that one got bigger. Now, whenever a new theory is presented, normally what they do is a case study. They publish a case study. They share one patient story. In this case, this is what we call a case series. So this is a study of 6 of those patients. And um, what was so interesting about this is that of these 6 patients, the vast majority of them had been taking Elmeron for 10 years or longer. However, the youngest patient, who I think was diagnosed with IC around 21, 22, took Elmeron for 6 years, and at the age of 28 or 29 had the worst damage. So making the suggestion that it takes a decade for eye damage to occur falls flat based upon this one patient story. And in fact, in this case series, let's see. No, she was diagnosed with IC at 24, and her eye symptoms began when she was 36 years. So a 6-year interval of use. Um, Obviously, when I found this, uh, it was stunning. Stunning. Like, I'm sitting here at my desk going, holy, what the hell? This is so bad. I emailed our medical board and said, have you seen this? One of them had, and thought it was deeply concerning. But I wanted to credibility test it, and so we put together a quick survey on our website, which now has, I think, 14. Let me look here real quick. 1,400 patients who have filled it out so far. This data is so solid and good that I was asked to send it to the FDA, which I did, with a request for a labeling change on Elmeron. Crap, wrong computer. Hold on. Let me go to this computer here. I'm sitting in front of 2 computers. Give me a moment. All right. Let me just log into that survey software and let's see where we are today. Because the interval had, I mean, the percentage had actually increased when I looked at it last. Okay, so we have 1,500 responses. So 1,500 patients have taken our survey so far. Let's see here. 95% of them are women. 5% are men. All ages, under 20 to over 80. So of these, 86% have taken Elmeron or Pentosyn. Most of them took brand name. Anywhere from less than a year to over 20 years. Okay. 54% of them have experienced retinal disease, eye or retinal illness. 54%. The symptoms: difficulty reading in 59%, 58% had difficulty with low lights, 31% dimming vision, 62% blurry vision. And I think what's really meaningful about this data is that 78% actually went to an eye doctor, an ophthalmologist. They thought it was that severe that they sought care for it. So, getting back to using Elmeron, in our study, we have got some patients who report eye changes within the first year. No, but again, you're looking at about a 50% cutoff. And again, this is an informal study. This is not a major proven study. This was just our attempt to try to credibility test the Emory Eye Center data. And boy, did it credibility test it correctly. In the meantime, in the last year, we have 4 or 5 new studies. Eye doctors around the country are diagnosing it now. It's a big deal, and it's just going to get bigger, in my opinion. I really think this is terrible. Dale says, "Do people get urethral symptoms too? I feel like I do sometimes." Yeah, urethral spasms are really interesting. And I have an article on our website called "The 7 Causes of Urethral Irritation." Urethral spasms we often see in patients with infection, but we're also going to see it in patients who have a genitourinary syndrome of menopause, estrogen atrophy, but it can also even be from very, very tight pelvic floor muscles. It can also be from something as simple as a laundry detergent or a fabric softener. If I put on a pair of underwear, washed and sheer or tied, within 5 minutes, I'll have urethral irritation. Rocio says, I was misdiagnosed with a urethral stricture 9 years ago. I had one urethrotomy in 2010 and another in 2016. Do you think this could have affected your pelvic floor strength? You know, urethral strictures are interesting. I mean, 20, 25 years ago, I mean, that was a diagnosis I had at one point in time as a kid, right? That you had a urethral stricture and I had urethral dilations. Um, if you were to go to a top IC research center, what they would do is they would ask, why is a urethra narrow? Because a urethral stricture implies that there's something obstructing the flow of urine through the urethra. It's kind of like trying to pee through a needle. You're pushing hard, and if you were to look down at your stream, it's a little tiny stream, the little tiny stream. And that means that you either have super tight muscles or you might have, for a guy, prostatitis or something else going on. Or, and as an example, I'll tell you, and I'm not going to name names or anything like that, but there is somebody online who has been saying that they have IC when in fact, they just found out it was probably never IC. It was probably a urethral stricture because they tried to catheterize it and out came a whole bunch of tissue. And it kind of, I think, went back to an old injury of some type. So it can happen, my friend. Hey, I need to give, and then we'll dive into your questions. I do need to give another consumer alert because, I think your safety and my safety is really important. You guys know that I love Harney and Sons pumpkin spice herbal tea, rooibos tea. Rooibos tea is considered to be very, very bladder friendly. And I found this at Barnes and Noble years ago, and I frequently drink it here on live. Today, I am not. Obviously, I'm just doing hot water. I don't know if you saw the study that came out earlier this week or last week that talked about quote unquote silken tea bags. This is not a plastic bag. This is quote unquote a silken tea bag. And I, in my innocence, really thought it was kind of made of silk. It's not. It's made of plastic. It's made of nylon. Well, a new study came out that showed that when you heat these up, billions of microplastics go into your drink. I have sent every single one back. We have stopped selling it in our store. I have an inquiry with the company, but I'll tell you what I'm doing because I love this tea. I literally went down to a kitchen store and I bought a tea infuser and I just cut it open and I dumped the contents in the tea infuser so that I'm not using the freaking bag because I have no interest in consuming microplastics, nor do I have any interest in selling anything through the IC network. And so, if there's one thing I can promise you is I act fast. And so, literally within an hour or two of that study coming out, it was out of my store. It was out of my store. And this company also has not issued a response yet. It's going to destroy them if they don't switch this immediately. They need to get back to a organic paper bag. But like I really thought it was silk. It didn't dawn on me, honestly, that it was plastic. And you find these everywhere. And the study specifically referenced this shaped a silken bag. You know, it looks like a pyramid, right? That these are the worst in that study. So if you bought any of these from our website, the tea itself is not bad. I recommend go to Sur La Table, spend $2, get a tea infuser, dump it into the tea infuser, and you can still enjoy it. Because I fully intend to keep drinking this. I'm just not going to use the freaking tea bag. So, I mean, like, come on, guys, give us a break. Right? Right. All right. Hold on. Am I comfortable? Let me think about this for a moment. Am I comfortable sitting here like this? Okay, I might be comfortable for another 10 minutes before I have to move again. All right, let's take your questions, my friends. Let's take your questions. Ryan says nothing has changed in 10 years in the medical field. Are you kidding? Dude, like seriously, do you get our magazine? Do you read our magazine? We have so many good things that have happened. We can now say that IC is curable in some patients because of subtyping. We this is the best. I mean, listen, we're not in the dark ages. You weren't this is not like 30 years ago where patients were told it was all in their head. We get it now. We know that there's muscle injury. We know that there can be bladder injury. We know the effect of hormones. We know the effect of chemicals. Dude, carry hope in your heart. Really, really good things are happening. And I sat on the U.S. Army IC research panel for a decade, and I'll tell you, I signed NDAs, and I can't talk about the studies, but I'm telling you, the research that's happening is fantastic. Lots and lots and lots and lots of good things are happening here. So carry hope in your heart. And if you want to talk, I'm here. My first support group was filled with men. I almost had more men than women, which was so interesting. And so, from my very first day, very first meeting as a support group leader, I was really struck by the challenges that men face. And so, that has kind of been one of my specialties for the last 26 years is working with guys. And so I would love to talk to you, Ryan, next week. Let's see if we can figure out your subtype. Let's see if we can give you some questions to ask your doctor and try to figure this out for you. All right, Facebook, cooperate. Let me go down to YouTube here. Lisa says she bought an infrared heating pad and she loves it. Yeah, but Lisa, if it's generating heat and if you have a candida, it's going to help it grow. You got to be really careful where you put it. Kel says, is there any negative information on the use of Elmeron in bladder installations? No, there's not. There's not. When you have a topical bladder instill, the medication normally stays, literally in the surface of the bladder. It does not usually get to the bloodstream to any great degree where it would spread throughout the human body. And so topical medications are considered much safer than oral medications as a rule. There are some incidents that can happen where a topical could do that if they use too much sodium bicarb. That could create more penetration, perhaps to blood vessels. But other than that, topicals are considered to be very safe. Harley says, "What about patients that have Tarlov cysts?" And I see what do we do for the pain? Thank you. So a Tarlov cyst is a little sac of spinal fluid that is coming in between two discs, and it's pushing on nerves. And so a Tarlov cyst is one of those things that can mimic IC. It can cause all the symptoms, especially bladder pain and pelvic pain. And so Harley down on YouTube, number one, we got to see if they can treat the Tarlov cyst. If there's a surgical remedy, because um and I'm trying to remember the last time I read about it. I did an article on it like 2 years ago. I thought I seem to remember. Let me see if I even have the magazine here. Hold on. I'll have to dig to find that article. I mean, 3 years ago, I think I did a pretty comprehensive article on Tarlov cysts, and I seem to remember that surgery was considered curative. Don't quote me. Again, I got to go back and do the research. But ultimately, in your case, Harley, it's all about trying to address pain as it happens, because we don't want the pain to get amplified. We don't want you to get up into a chronic pain situation. And so treating pain aggressively and compassionately is pretty important, but pretty hard in today's opiate climate. I was reading something today about somebody had a hip replacement and they only give them Tylenol. It's like, are you kidding me? I think it'd be really interesting to try the PEA, the palmito ethanolamide. Because what the research studies in Europe showed was it was pretty good with neuropathic pain. And so that might be reasonable. But you might have to see a pain specialist. You might have to have a nerve block. I mean, I just don't know, hun. I don't know. I don't know where your cysts are. I'm not a cyst expert, but I mean, that clearly has to be your focus, is what can we do for that cyst? All right. Let me go back to Facebook here. I have to make things a little bit bigger so I can see Facebook. Brenda says, "You're on Elmeron right now. What's the concern?" Brenda, the concern is we have known now for the last year that Elmeron has been linked to eye damage, retinal damage. So if you have blurry vision, if you have difficulty going from low light to bright light, if you are having difficulty reading, we now have multiple research studies which show that it appears that a toxic metabolite of the Elmeron is accumulating on the retina and permanently damaging the retina. We've done a lot of articles on it. We've been talking about it aggressively for a year now in these support group meetings. I think what stuns me is that despite multiple research studies, um, the ICA, I don't believe, is talking about it at all and informing their members. And I think that's a real travesty, to be quite honest. Every IC patient on Elmeron should now know about this risk of eye damage, because what the researchers at Emory say is if you're experiencing any eye symptoms at all, you should get off the medication immediately to try to save your eyesight. You can go over to our website. I also have a website, I built a separate website called Pentosan Eye Damage .org that you can go and read that research too. Ryan says the doctor didn't tell you to start the supplements. You're doing the installations. So Ryan, if you go over to our website, icnetwork.org, like icnetwork.org, go to our treatment area. We have a link to the American Urology Association guidelines. And so you can read it right from the source. Here, hold on. You can read it right from the source. This is what this is how the American Urology Association says IC should be treated. And you always start with self-help. So we got to increase water intake to dilute urine. You got to modify your diet to make sure you're not doing something which is irritating your bladder. Got to do some basic muscle relaxation, perhaps acupuncture, but the supplements are viable alternatives. And given the fact that so many therapies are expensive, Elmeron can be very expensive. Patients have been using supplements now for 2 decades. Deb says, "What about Cystoprotec?" So Cystoprotec right now is not for sale in the United States because of a cancer warning that appeared on the Cystoprotec bottle last spring. And that was associated with one ingredient, titanium dioxide, which is a food coloring. Titanium dioxide, if you inhale it, has been associated with lung cancer. However, the FDA says it is perfectly safe if you swallow it, if it's in the form of a white food coloring. However, it is being banned throughout the world because of other concerns with titanium dioxide. So, Sister Protec is in the process of being reformulated. And hopefully we will have the new titanium-free formula of Sister Protec month, 6 weeks, 2 months, somewhere in there. But in the meantime, you got Bladder Builder, which honestly is a much better formula than Sister Protec, or Bladder Rest, which is a stronger formula than Sister Protec. But there's no way anybody can tell you what's going to work for you. You know, it's just trial and error. Lisa says, although the ICA is not blocking posts about it on their forum, you're right. They're not patients are talking about it, but they haven't, as far as I know, really issued an aggressive statement about it. Of course, I don't get their magazine anymore, so I don't know what they put in their magazine. So I could be wrong, and if I am, I apologize. I'd like to see it on on their website front and center, though. I think it's really important. Molly says, I had a mini flare from lifting a 4-liter jug of water off the floor. Hello, pelvic floor issues. Yeah, and she says, so yeah, girl, that we would definitely say that that's pelvic floor. I got no doubt about that. You moved, you bent, you lifted something, it stressed your pelvic floor, you had a pelvic floor flare. It's exactly what we think. And you're right, no insurance covers pelvic floor physical therapy. It is out of pocket. So if you cannot afford, now my last pelvic floor physical therapy, when I went out of Kaiser Permanente, if I'm in Kaiser Permanente, it's $15 a session. But unfortunately, you cannot get weekly sessions. They're so busy. You're lucky to get an appointment every month or every 6 weeks, which is not ideal for pelvic floor work. When I paid out of pocket for physical therapy, it's $110 a session. And that was, that's hard. And so if money is an issue, what I tend to tell patients is save up for one visit. If you can just go once and have a pelvic floor assessment so they can at least tell you which muscle group is the problem. Is it the levator? Is it the piriformis? Is it the psoas? Just going once and having that examination is so important. And hopefully you'll walk out of that meeting with, or that appointment with, some exercises that they can tell you to do, the names of the muscles, so that you can then go into some of the books that we have, like Ending Female Pelvic Pain, Ending Male Pelvic Pain, and kind of do your own research there. And then maybe just do one visit to a physical therapist every 4 months, every 6 months, as long as you're making an effort on a daily basis to try to work with those muscles. And guys, listen, I got to tell you, with pelvic floor, you can't fake it. Please do not go, I can do this at home, I don't need help. Because what you're going to do is start doing Kegels, and Kegels are only going to make it worse. Way, 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 way worse. You got to know the muscle group, and you got to know the correct exercises for whatever muscle group that it is. I've already done mine. I did mine today. Dale says, do you have a link to the Elmeron article you can take? It's on our website, hon. If you go to icnetwork.org and go into the blog area. Let me look and see if it is. You might have to go into the past blogs. Hold on. Let me look. Yeah, it's right on the front page, hun. In the first row of articles, long-term Elmeron use may be linked to eye disease. So go to that one. Go to that blog. And then on that blog, so we got lots of pictures on that blog. You can print out this article, and then I have an extensive reference list that you can print out with links to the articles. It will link you over to the National Library of Medicine, and then you can print out that abstract for your doctor too. Okay, so it's Dale, it's right there on our website. Ryan says, is the eye damage reversed? Not at this time. They do believe that it's permanent. They're not sure. So I mean that's obviously one of the goals of the research right now is now that they've got patients in their studies who are now off of Elmeron, they can now go back and re-examine their eyes every 6 months to a year to see, if anything is improving. I do not believe at this point in time they are seeing any improvement. That's why I mean guys, listen. It is not my job to get in between you and your doctor. I don't want my worst case scenario as an IC patient is to accidentally turn you away from the one therapy that can work for you. And which is why I try not to have really strong opinions about stuff. I just kind of want to give you the pros and cons, kick you in the butt, get you back to your doctor to have a discussion about it. Um, um, there's a concept of informed consent. And in informed consent, you need to know the facts before you can consent to have a therapy. And that's what we've got to work on right now. We've got to make sure that urologists tell patients in advance that this could affect their eyesight so that you can decide if you want to do it. Again, the AUA says start with the supplements. The supplements do not have the same risks that the Elmeron has, as far as we know today. And the supplements, like Bladder Builder, Bladder Rest, Cysto Protect, if we had it, Cysto Renew, Desert Harvest Aloe, those have a very similar effect that the Elmeron has. It serves as a bladder coating. And so most patients now would not start with the Elmeron. They would start with the supplement. Deborah says Elmeron works great for you, but you're scared now. And honestly, hun, I think that that's healthy. I think that you've got to be super, super, super alert. Now, remember, in our study, it's only 54%. Right? It's only so 46% are fine. They're not having any eye issues. And I really, really pray that you're going to be in that group. But the minute you notice any eye issues at all, and I would say that you should get an eye exam every single year. You should get an eye exam every single year to check your retina to make sure nothing is happening. And that's exactly what the doctors at Emory said in their letter to the editor. And I have it right here. This is the very first letter to the editor that they sent to the Journal of Urology. And let's see. These cases were identified during a brief 2-year period at our university-based specialty clinic for retinal disease, where we are accustomed to evaluating rare retinal diseases. After extensive investigations, which include molecular testing for hereditary retinal disease, we found these cases to resemble no other known retinal disease. Furthermore, we are unable to postulate a pathophysiological mechanism linking IC itself to these findings. Pending further investigation, it remains unclear whether drug cessation will halt or alter the course of retinal disease. However, we encourage drug cessation in affected patients. In other words, they say patients should stop it if they're having any eye symptoms. Furthermore, we currently recommend any patient with suggestive visual symptoms undergo a comprehensive ophthalmic examination. Yeah, and they say why. These recommendations will undoubtedly evolve as we learn more about this and may involve routine surveillance examinations at predefined levels of drug exposure. So yeah, doctor's appointment. You gotta have, in my opinion, you should have an eye exam every year. And if you're already having eye issues, maybe even every 6 months. Michelle says her eyes are already messed up. You are always already nearsighted, and now you're farsighted. I have one eye nearsighted and one eye farsighted. Andrea says she's taking Elmeron now with something for your bladder spasms. So again, guys, I mean, here. Let me just let's just show these to you, okay? I mean, let me just show these to you so at least you can see them. Desert Harvest Aloe. Been around for 30 years. A double-blind placebo-controlled study showed that Desert Harvest Aloe was successful at reducing some of the symptoms of IC. And you can get this right on our website. Sister Renew. It's a which is chondroitin let's see, it's got chondroitin hyaluronate with a little bit of aloe in it. Is that right? Yeah. No, wait. Hold on a sec. God, there's so yeah, it has aloe in it, but it also has a little bit of lemon balm in it. Lemon balm is a mint with a lemony scent. It's not citrus lemon that's known for kind of calming and soothing nerves. So this has a small following. This Desert Harvest Aloe is quite popular. This one has a bit of a smaller following. The top dog for years was Sister Protect, but Sister Protect is, they shot themselves in the foot with the cancer warnings. So we'll see. The supplements that I think right now are the most interesting, Bladder Builder. Bladder Builder takes everything of the other supplements, but adds collagen for the bladder wall. It adds probiotics for the gut, and it adds PEA, palmitoethanolamide, for pain. And palmitoethanolamide has been used in Europe for more than a decade for all sorts of different chronic pain conditions. And we have our first PEA IC study that was released last spring by researchers in Italy, which showed remarkable success at reducing the pain and discomfort of IC. Peora is the American version of that research formula. And so this is just PEA and resveratrol. There's nothing in this that will support the bladder like chondroitin and hyaluronate. But if you're already doing aloe, if you're already doing Cysto Protect or something like that, and you just want to add something that might help reduce some of your discomfort, Peora would be the thing to try. It's considered very safe. The research study showed very, very, very few side effects. Most studies, like the IC study, had no side effects reported, although another study showed some stomach upset. But anyway, just like all the supplements, we all have issues. And then for those of you who loved Sister Protect and then you stopped taking it because of the cancer warning, the same company that made these made Bladder Rest as an alternative. This is very similar to the Sister Protect formula, but it's stronger, has 40 milligrams more of the essential ingredients in it. And instead of using the olive oil as a base, it uses avocado oil as a base, which makes it much easier to ship on the hot summer months. So there are lots of supplements out there that you can try. You can get them all over on the IC Network website. We are, because I've worked with this company for a year. I mean, I'll just tell you right now, Bladder Builder was something that we had a team of people working on for more than a year. The top IC researcher in the country, me, a couple of other doctors, the CEO of the company. And we were just kind of trying to bring supplementation perhaps to a next level. And so this is the one that is the most exciting. But if you're sensitive, and you're afraid to try stuff because of reactions, I wouldn't start with this because there's a hell of a lot of stuff in it. You might want to start with Peora first. Okay. You just go to icnetwork.org, click on shop, and you can go into the shop and see it. Ryan says, you're a huge tea drinker. I'm hangry all the time with food restrictions. Ryan, what kind of tea are you drinking? Please, you should not be drinking green tea. Of all the teas, that is probably the worst, as well as a strong, bitter, caffeinated tea. It would be better for, you gotta, at least before you have your tea, take some pre-leaf, right? Take a pre-leaf, and this would at least reduce the residual acid in the tea. But it's not going to deal with the caffeine. And remember, the reason why people like coffee in the morning is it makes you it gives you energy because of the caffeine, and it makes you pee. Anybody who drinks coffee, what do you normally do? You pee and you poop. That's the caffeine triggering the nerves. And so doing a decaf tea would be ideal. If you're an Earl Grey lover, do a decaf Earl Grey and use a pre-leaf, and you might be able to get away with it. Okay. Hi, Corrine. Kathy. I don't know what that means. Nerdin says, I'm now taking bladder rest, and after taking it for 2 weeks, I saw a tremendous amount of help with frequency and pain. Awesome. Nerdin, that's exactly what we want to see. And you say you hope no negative news will come out of it. Well, that's a dice that we all roll. I will tell you, Nerdin, that Natural Approach to Nutrition is absolutely impeccable with their ingredient sourcing and testing. And so um, I, let's just say that I've spent a hell of a lot of money trying to make this happen, if that makes sense. I wouldn't give I wouldn't give a company I didn't trust my own money. And I'm really, really pleased with the results. We've got doctors now around the country who are starting to carry it in their clinics. We're really excited. There are several other supplements in this product line, one of which is called Prevent for patients struggling with recurring UTIs. They're all being vetted by a really nice team of researchers and doctors first. And no titanium dioxide. Claire says, I was told you had a urethral stricture after your cystoscopy, and that's why they stretch your urethra. Pain was off the scale. Would pee just drops randomly. 14 years later, it turned out that you didn't have this or IC as I responded to high dose. Well, hun, I was diagnosed with a urethral stricture when I was in 7th grade, and I was dilated once a week for 2 years. Today, we ask ourselves, why would the urethra be narrow? Because your urethra is roughly the size of your little finger in length and in dimension. And there are many different reasons why that can happen. Tight pelvic floor muscles is the number one reason why urethral strictures happen. And so unlike years past, where they just gave dilations to everybody. Now the top IC doctors in the world are taking a step back and asking, okay, why is this tight? What would cause this hollow tube to shrink? And there are many, many different things that could cause that. Lily says, my doctor told you heparin installations help heal the bladder, but then you've heard it can make it worse. Heparin itself is actually in a shortage right now. It's getting very, very hard, very, very hard to find heparin. Doctors are canceling appointments for rescue installations because of the shortage of heparin. It's a daily topic in our office now. All of the US-based heparin manufacturers were shipped off to China about a decade ago, and that's been fairly disastrous for our supply because I will tell you, Chinese heparin installations have been under scrutiny by the FDA, and they have been found lacking. They've been found filthy, to be quite honest. Um, the ingredient in it is, as long as it's safe heparin and not contaminated heparin, um, the one that could potentially trigger more irritation would be lidocaine. Some patients are intolerant to lidocaine and they have to do marcaine instead. But most of the time when you have a rescue install, you're able to walk out of the doctor's office pain-free for a couple of hours. And that's really important because it can calm nerves down and it gives you some rest. Lidocaine also has some pretty big issues. We had a patient who had a hydrodistension last spring, and after the hydro, they gave her a lidocaine. They apparently didn't realize that they had ruptured her bladder, and she got almost a lethal dose of lidocaine into her bloodstream, and her heart stopped. And that was an IC patient having a hydrodistension. And they saved her life, but holy hell, that was scary. And then they didn't tell her, she woke up in the ICU. She had no idea that her heart had stopped. And then they were not truthful with her as to why that happened. And it took a while for her to figure out and another doctor to figure it out. Lily says her doctor refused to put her on Elmeron. Yeah, a lot of doctors are kind of backing away from Elmeron right now. Nerdin says bladder rest is the best supplement I've ever used. Lily says my IC started after falling with my mom. She slipped and she has Alzheimer's. So Lily, in your case, I mean, honestly, in your case, whenever we see IC symptoms begin after some sort of traumatic injury like a fall, we're really looking at trauma to the pelvic floor. And so I think it's really, really important to make sure that you have a proper pelvic floor assessment. I mean, that's not a situation where we would see something else. Erin says her physical therapy is covered under insurance. Hello, Julie. Hi, Dale. Dale says Obamacare covered 90% of his pelvic floor physical therapy, which is why we got to fight to keep it. And Christine says Medicare and Medicaid covers. That's good because I was working with a Medicaid patient earlier this week whose physical therapy was not covered. So, Christina, get it while you can. I'm going to sneeze. Deb says, I'm about to start a weekly session with an expert in myofascial release. Do you think this is a good idea? Absolutely. If you've got tight pelvic floor muscles, you could easily have tight fascia also. I was rolling on when I went to sleep last night, I did something weird and I totally messed up my SI joint, just rolling the wrong way. And I was just laying there feeling this pins and needles throbbing at the top of the backside of my upper leg as it attaches to the hip. And uh, this so I laid there, grabbed my SI belt, put it on. I don't know how I fell asleep, but thank God I fell asleep. But this morning it was hurting like hell. So I went and got my foam roller. And to me, what's so interesting is when you use a foam roller, you're really working on fascia. Guys, if you don't know what fascia is, you've got muscle, but the muscles have to attach to bone, and they usually do that with tendon and fascia, and there's kind of this network of fascia in the area that can also become involved. It can become blocked from blood flow. It can get tight. And the foam roller is a really good way to work on fascia also. I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about. Let me go get it. Hold on. All right. So so this is the foam roller, right? And so normally you're on the ground and you're you're either rolling this way or you're rolling at a right angle, right? Here, let me take that off. That's my SI belt, right? So you're rolling like this where you're kind of sitting on it on the floor and you're rolling up and down. And I have to say that of everything that I was doing this morning to try to get this SI joint and muscles to stop messing with me, it was the roller that worked the best. Also, having these little yoga balls like this, with the yoga balls, you put them in between your knees and then you do deep squats like right like that. Anyway. Okay, hold on. Let me get a drink. Patty says you're dealing with a sick cat. Oh, hon, I'm so sorry. Hope your cat gets better. Guys, let me just put out a warning here about Cheriston, the flea cat, the cat flea treatment, Cheriston. Be super careful with that. It just killed the healthiest cat in our neighborhood, Happy Cat. I don't know if you guys ever met him. He used to come in. He spent several hours a day in our house visiting with my folks. Beautiful, big, gorgeous gray cat. Changed his flea med, put him on Cheriston. It's terrible. Absolutely terrible. And then the owner just didn't jump on it. I told him, like, within the first day, I said, there's something wrong with your cat. And he, like, blew it off. Yeah, the cat's dead now. Infuriating. I had a house call doctor. Molly says, a house call doctor tell you all you needed to do was Kegels. I thought he was talking out of his ass. You said had, I said ass. Yeah, you don't do Kegels when you got tight muscles. There's no point in tightening muscles that are already too tight. If a Kegel hurts, your muscles are tight. You don't do Kegels. You do something called quick flicks. Deborah says, you give more support than my doctor. Well, they don't have time to do what I do. They're running. You got to understand, I have met some of the most amazing doctors in the world, and they are energizer bunnies. They are up at 4 in the morning to get to surgery. At 5 or 6, they do their surgeries, they do their grand rounds, then they go to their clinic and they see patients. And you take the top IC doctors like the Rob Moldens, the Rob Evans, the Ken Peters. You got to understand that their daily life is rough. And a lot of doctors burn out. Urologists have the second highest rate of suicide and among all medical specialties. And then throw in insurance companies that are rating them based upon how many patients they're seeing. They want to spend an hour with you. They can only spend 15 minutes with you before the next patient comes. They're in a bad situation. And you guys, I don't know if you guys know Dr. Dan Brookoff, who is the national pain expert on IC. He did take his life. He did commit suicide. And he was in that situation where he had started a pain clinic in Nashville or Memphis, and he spent an hour. His appointments were an hour, and they just told him, "You're not making us enough money. You need to spend less time with patients." And they cracked down on him over and over and over again, and eventually closed his clinic. Then he moved to Denver and made some mistakes, and unfortunately, a couple patients died in his care. And he took his life when the malpractice lawsuit settled. Terrible tragedy for everyone involved. Everyone involved. If they had just been given the proper support at Memphis, none of this would have happened. Lovely man. He was a friend of mine. Sabrina says, can a tight pelvic floor cause bladder wall damage? The answer is yes, because tight muscles, right? So look, if you squeeze your arm, Look, you see, you're pushing the muscle, you're pushing the blood away from the area when you squeeze it down. And look, see, it takes a couple of seconds for the blood flow to come back. Well, when you're squeezing the bladder, you're depriving the bladder of blood flow. It is very hard for the bladder to be healthy if it doesn't have a good supply of oxygen and a good supply of nutrition. So the answer is yes. I call it the chicken versus the egg dilemma. Which comes first, the chicken or the egg? And for us, it's which comes first, the bladder or the pelvic floor. If your symptoms started after chemotherapy, because the chemicals of the chemo are badly irritating your bladder and your bladder screaming in pain, of course your muscles are going to get tight. We call that a guarding reflex. That is the guarding reflex. You cannot turn that off. That is subconscious. So here you've got a pulsing bladder, right? Bladder's in pain, and your muscles are naturally going to come and hold it. That's a normal reflex. And as long as that bladder is pulsing in pain, the muscles are going to stay tight. So our therapeutic priority for somebody with chemocystitis is to calm and soothe the bladder. When we can get the bladder calmed down, the muscles should relax. But you're really asking about the opposite circumstance. What about those patients whose symptoms began with a traumatic fall? Okay, so here you've got a healthy bladder, and bam, you fall on your butt, bam, your muscles get really tight and they start squeezing your bladder, and they squeeze blood vessels, and they squeeze nerves, and you could have any signs like that. So you really have no freaking clue that you've hurt yourself. And your first symptom is frequency urgency. You think, oh, I got a bladder infection. You call the doctor, say you think you have a bladder infection, and many doctors, well, they used to, not so much now, they would just throw you Scepter over the phone or Sulfa over the phone. You take that, doesn't work. You go back to the doctor. Doctor, I still have problems. And the doctor goes, maybe you got overactive bladder, and they give you overactive bladder meds. Those don't work. You go back to the doctor. The doctor goes, oh, I hate to say this, but I think you might have interstitial cystitis. This is really rough. Let's try an Elmeron. And the Elmeron doesn't work. And the reality for this patient is none of those bladder therapies are going to be help. Antibiotics are not going to help these patients either. What's going to help these patients are relaxing the muscle. So our therapeutic priority for pelvic floor muscle injuries is to restore blood flow. How do we restore blood flow? We release the muscles. When you release the muscles, the bladder then gets the nutrition that it needs to be as healthy as it can be. That's why subtyping is so important. If you were to work with me when I work with patients on the phone, if you call our support line, you know, as I try to kind of work on your subtype, when we educate you about that, we often go right back to, when did your symptoms begin? Was there any event that triggered your symptoms? So, as an example, the high school football player who had been diagnosed with chronic prostatitis and then IC, and he'd been on antibiotics, he's been on prostate medication, none of it worked. And so, like, I'm on the phone with his mom, because he's like 19 years old, didn't want to talk to anybody. So, I'm talking with her because she's the one who called me. And I said, okay, let's go back in time. When did this start? And she goes, it started when he took a ski trip. And it's like, okay, what happened on the ski trip? He fell off the ski lift. He had never been assessed for a pelvic floor injury. He had never been assessed for a pelvic injury because, guys, they're, well, most of us, not just guys, most of us, we're not going to, we're going to slough it off. We're just going to slough it off. Oh, yeah, I fell. It's fine. Without really understanding that there was some sort of trauma. A very, very good friend of mine got hurt at the gym, and he went to a chiropractor, and the first chiropractor didn't fix it. So he went to a second chiropractor who hurt him badly. And he now has 5 bulging discs from this chiropractic therapy. And again, kind of in that case, he did not really understand the depth of the original injury, and then he kind of was looking for a quick fix. And you got to be careful about that. Healing takes time. Healing takes time. You can't go to a physical therapist once or chiropractor once and expect everything to get better. For many of you, you've been having muscle issues for a decade or longer. I now know when I hurt my SI joint. I remember distinctly hurting it on the tennis court when I was 21. I remember the sensation. I remember having to bend over to try to get the pain to stop. And now, 38 years later, it is the bane of my life. Arrgh, arrgh. Getting old sucks. Catherine says, thank you for all you do. I've learned. You guys, listen, if you like these support group meetings and you want to keep them happening, we really need your support. It would be so wonderful if you came over to the IC Network website and you signed up for our magazine. We have subscriptions, $25, $50, $100, your choice. Lots of things attached to each subscription, but even the $25 one's really, really helpful to us. And if you don't know what the IC Optimist is, we've been doing this for 16 years. Let's see. I'm working on the fall one. We're working on the fall one right now. Hopefully it will be done in 2 weeks. So this was the last one we did. And I'm going to tell you honestly right now, I never use sad pictures. Like you're never going to see a sad person in our magazine. I have no interest in doing that. It's called The Optimist for a reason. I'm very optimistic and I want you to be very optimistic. So in this magazine, we have the great debate is IC the result of infection. We have a huge section on the course that was taught on IC at the big International Urology Conference last spring. We cover the latest research. We cover bladder endometriosis, a new startup company that's looking for some funding for new IC therapy. We cover the international IC meeting. We do clinical trial recruitment. We give some cancer warning or some consumer alerts, share patient stories in my Remarkable Patients with IC series. And listen, I love featuring success stories, and I love featuring stories of patients who are doing great things, even if they've got pelvic pain. And if you're one of those patients where you're doing something, except we featured musicians, we featured comedians, business owners, winemakers with IC. If you would like to be featured, please reach out to me because I'm always looking to share stories and I want to inspire people. Also in this magazine is a section on CBD oil, and as well as summer tips, salsa, low acid salsa, and sharing from another medical care provider, her holistic IC treatment plan, Mary Ruth Valicki. So, these are chock full of things. My goal with these, I kind of learned early on that a lot of the old IC materials were kind of bragging about stuff. And it's like, you don't need to know what I'm doing. You don't need to know this or that about me. You need facts. So my goal with every single meeting is within 5 minutes, I want you to find something that could be helpful. And so it's very practical. It's written by IC patients and clinicians for IC patients and clinicians. Kel says, what about pelvic floor dysfunction from tailbone injury during childhood? Absolutely. That will absolutely trigger IC symptoms in some patients. Well known. Harley Lady says, what about Kenalog installations? Kenalog is a steroid. Kenalog is normally included with some of the other bladder instills, whether it's a DMSO installation or a heparin installation. I don't know if anybody doing straight Kenalog, to be quite honest. Let's see. JKA says, I do feel like my eyes have gotten worse 7 months in, but I'm too afraid to wait because the symptoms have been so severe. So JKA, that doesn't mean that you can't add some other things, but ultimately it begins with subtyping. Okay, you got to try to understand your unique case of IC first, because if your IC is being driven by Hunner's lesions, the Elmeron would be a waste of time. If your IC is being driven by pelvic floor dysfunction or pudendal neuralgia, again, the Elmeron would be a complete waste of time. So ultimately, in the end, it's about trying to understand your unique presentation of IC. What is happening in your pelvis? Is it related to an organ, your bladder, your uterus, your ovaries? Is it related to muscles? Is it related to nerves? Are there genetics involved? So don't let fear stop you from doing stuff. Information is power, my friend. Information is power. It's about checking, making a checklist and checking things off. Sonia says, I have found over the last 14 years of your IC pelvic floor treatment plans only work for 1 or 2 years and more research to determine frequency, urgency with pain. Well, the other thing, Sonia, that's absolutely undeniable is aging changes the way the bladder works and the way the muscles work. And so, I'm going to hazard to guess that if you were a teenager, like from the ages of 20, 15 to 39, we wouldn't necessarily expect to see any age-related changes in your symptoms. However, once you're in your 40s and we start seeing perimenopause, then we're going to start seeing changes in your bladder lining, your urethral lining, also known as estrogen atrophy, as well as a weakening of muscles. Okay, speaking of muscles, I can't sit here anymore. Hold on. It's time to stand. Hence the magic sit stand desk. As long as I don't accidentally unplug the computer, we are good. Whoa, 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 hold on. Whoa, 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 whoa. What's that? Okay. Hold on. Whoa, what the hell? What was that? Oh, that was my time machine. Okay, so what is the problem here? That's the problem. Huh, weird. All right. Hold on. Oh, I see that. Oh, hold on. I get back up when I fall. Okay. Hey man, it's not a support group meeting here. Is that working? My connection is unstable. All right, YouTube, are we working? Ah. All right, hold on. Let's restart.